means that the number one pick in the 2021 NBA draft goes to the Detroit Pistons.
Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft? Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft?
Basketball!
Select Isaiah Stewart.
The Detroit Pistons select Killian Hayes.
Sadiq, that was absolutely sensational.
I don't know what went into that process. I met the criteria to be selected, but I wasn't.
From long range. Oh! Yes!
Yes! Detroit basketball! Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Network. I'm your host, Mike Anguilano, and joining me this week is Aaron Johnson. Aaron, we can't figure out how to get all three of us in a pod, but I think we're getting a little closer by you being here and Jasper being on the last two. It's just maybe next week we'll be able to hammer that out.
I can't believe that I've missed the last 2 weeks. I can't remember the last time I missed the show 2 weeks in a row. I mean, I know that
it's probably been a while.
We took a break. I mean, this is back when you weren't on the show for a while. We took a break, obviously, when the NBA stopped at the start of COVID. Other than that, I can't remember missing back-to-back weeks, unless like we took as a show we took the week off. I can't remember not being here for 2 weeks, and it absolutely sucked. So I am pumped to be back. It's my fault again. I will take the blame this week that Jasper's not here because once again, we usually record on Thursdays, and for the last 3 Thursdays, I have had things come up. And this week I said, hey, any chance we can record Wednesday? I got something that came up again on Thursday. Jasper, unfortunately, didn't have, the availability for Thursday to record. So he said, hey, Aaron, I know you've not been on the show for a few weeks. You guys do it Wednesday. And so I'll take the blame that Jasper's not here. Not going to give him any crap for not being here. It's my fault, but I'm thankful to be back on the show. The listeners are going to be pissed because there's not been as much complaining in the YouTube comment section or Facebook replies the last 2 weeks. Now the number one hater's back, and I'm still ready to talk ball. I'm still ready to talk Pistons.
Well, let's get right into it. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor again for this week, and that's BetOnline. And BetOnline remains your number one source for all your college basketball betting this season. Get an analysis of every play, prop, and point at BetOnline. You'll find the latest odds, bracket contests, team matchups, and game trends at BetOnline. Updated odds for everything from live games, the conference championships, which fortunately are now over, but we're on to March Madness, right through to the Final Four and to the national championship game. BetOnline is your college basketball headquarters this season. Head on over to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit at betonline.ag. Again, a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit at betonline.ag. BetOnline, where the game starts. Aaron, let's get right into the first topic for today. And we've had a lot of guys injured, not able to play for one reason or another, and that has allowed for some of the fringe roster players to get a lot more time out on the court. We're talking about RJ Hampton, who has made an impact, and perhaps most endearing to the fans, Eugene Omoruyi. 9.4 points, 3.3 boards, 47% shooting. He just signed a second 10-day contract with the Pistons. He's played pretty well, I mean, all things considered. And then RJ Hampton, 7 points, 2.4 rebounds, just over an assist per game on 43% shooting, but 44% from three. It's hard to really assess some of these guys based on how badly the Pistons beat the Indiana Pacers, and RJ Hampton was scorching that game. Hampton has a contract that's non-guaranteed for next year, but it is guaranteed for the rest of this season. So Eugene Omoruyi, RJ Hampton, they have gotten an opportunity to play, and they are making the most of it. What are your thoughts on those two guys as they see a minutes uptick given some of the injuries around with Cade Cunningham and Bojan Bogdanovic and Isaiah Livers and Sadiq Bey being traded out.
Yeah, I mean, both these guys have certainly made the most of their minutes on a roster that's just been absolutely depleted since either of them got here. You know, with the Pistons resting, shutting down, sitting, so many guys, couple of guys that are actually injured, not playing. These guys have gotten a real opportunity to step in and contribute. And, you know, I'll say at the forefront of this, long term, next year, you know, I don't know if either of these guys are on the team or impact players, but from what we've seen from each of them so far, Omoruyi and Hampton have both had their moments. You know, they were playing an Indiana team a couple times who were playing, you know, without Miles Turner, without Tyrese Halliburton, you know, without some of their key pieces, obviously on both sides of the floor, same as the Pistons were. But it was really just, you know, you get a couple games where it just was that pickup basketball feel, bunch of guys who didn't always get a ton of minutes, didn't always get a ton of burn, haven't been with the team for forever, just going out there and playing. No real, you know, lineups with a bunch of chemistry and minutes together, just going out there and playing basketball. And both these guys, you know, definitely had a couple nice games. And each of them, you know, they've only played. Hampton's only been here for 10 games. Omoruyi's only been here for 7. But they are making an impact. I think the biggest thing with both of them that I think is easiest that jumps off the screen is they're two guys that have really competed on the defensive end of the floor. And for a Pistons team that has consistently been so bad defensively, has lacked intensity on that side of the court all season long, it's nice to see a couple guys come in and really give an effort on that side of the court and make some plays on that side of the court that have led to some turnovers, have led to some transition opportunities. And it makes the times when they do score the ball, when they make a nice play on the offensive side of the floor, just that much sweeter. It stands out more. It pops more because on the other end, they're actually going down there and they're competing and they're trying to get stops. And even if the team as a whole isn't playing good defense, those guys in their minutes have competed on that side of the court. And we've heard it, you know, on the broadcast in all, you know, a lot of these games that they've been out there is it's something that's really being noticed. You know, even, you know, George Blaha, Greg Kelleser, play-by-play color commentators on Valley Sports Detroit, like they're even noticing like, hey, these guys are actually competing on that side. And it's definitely stood out. I can't complain about the way either of them are playing. You know, Omoruyi shooting 22% from the three-point line. He's never really been a three-point shooter. That's something that's concerning moving forward. RJ Hampton shooting 44% in, you know, the 10 games he's been with the team. But before that, you know, he shot 34% this year with Orlando, 35% last year, 31% in his rookie season, 116 games with Orlando, was a 34% three-point shooter, you know, over the last 3 seasons. I don't buy into that 44% shooting over 10 games with Detroit from beyond the arc. You know, I don't think he's some 3-and-D guard that is all of a sudden figured it out. I think it's a byproduct of he's getting a lot of minutes right now. The Pistons are putting the ball in his hands. They're forcing him to make plays, make decisions, be a threat out there. You know, the same way they're doing with Killian Hayes, the same way Corey Joseph's having to do that. They're so depleted on guards in the rotation right now that the few that they have are being forced by nature of the beast. Like, you've got to go do something. You're going to play 20, 30 minutes. You've got to be able to make some plays. You've got to be willing to take some shots. And Hampton's been taking them and making them. And he's certainly shown some nice things. Don't want to take anything away from him. But, you know, these guys are also byproducts of what's going on. It's byproducts of how they got here. You know, neither of these guys were great prospects or anything of that nature. You know, Hampton kind of has fizzled out throughout the first few years of his NBA career. Omoruyi's already 25. He was a rookie last season. You know, he played a 5th year of college. So these guys aren't necessarily star-studded prospects. I know Hampton was a little bit of a bigger name going into his year overseas, you know, the year leading up to the NBA draft. But by the time the draft came around, he had already, you know, sort of fallen out of that top 5 where he was ranked prior to the draft, prior to the season. And then he ended up getting drafted a little bit later. But both these guys playing well. I don't know what their future looks like with the Pistons. I think they've made the most of the minutes. And we'll see what they do over the rest of the season. Perhaps they're summer league guys next year, like training camp guys next year, and they get another couple opportunities there to prove their worth. But I like what I've seen from them so far. I don't know if at this point in the year it means enough. I mean, you do tend to see it at this point of the season, and we've seen Detroit over the last few years. You think guys like Tyler Cook, who's come in and just a byproduct of those minutes. He's making plays, showing up in the box score more. But what they've done is good, and it's helped this team, and I don't want to take anything away from them in that regard.
Yeah, they both played well, and you touched on what their future is going to be, and it's unclear. I think if both of these guys are on the roster to start next season, then they're not going to see the floor at all, and maybe it's a bad sign if they're both on the roster. RJ Hampton's non-guaranteed. I would imagine the Pistons are going to be more in the market for a veteran point guard or shooting guard to try to shore up the team. And I'm not even sure if Hampton's playing, if Alec Burks is healthy. So, he's probably not on the roster. They're probably just taking a flyer on a guy who was a high-end prospect, who was the odd man out in a very guard-heavy roster in Orlando, especially after Markelle Fultz came back and played well. There was really no need for RJ Hampton. Omoruyi is a little more intriguing, I think, given that he's just at a position of need right now at wing. But again, I don't think he's going to be on the roster to start next year. I think training camp, summer camp type guys, who are there to get the most of minutes and maybe be trying out for another roster that has more of a use for them. But, there's no denying that they've been fun to watch at a point in the season on a team that has not had a whole lot of fun to cheer about lately, between everybody being basically inactive. You are running out like 0 starters from opening night at this point. So it's tough. But the future, I think you're probably right. If any of these guys are on the team, it's not a good sign, but maybe they come back for summer league, and we see what happens maybe in training camp, and then they get whittled out. The fact of the matter is, both these players are probably playing for the ability to stay in the NBA. I mean, RJ Hampton's on his third team. He didn't make it work in Orlando or in Denver. It wasn't really until that Pacers game where he was shooting the lights out that I felt he had any real spot long term. So it's probably going to be just finish out the season and go into summer league and training camp, and then probably waive both of these players by then, if not before. So, weekly stock report. I think Jasper and I missed this last week. Actually, we just had so much to talk about. We both wanted to talk about Jaden Ivey and his ability to pace an offense and shoot the ball, and particularly his passing. And I think we just forgot to do stock down, guys. So I guess before we go into stock report, any other roster additions that are kind of fringy that you wanted to touch on? You haven't really mentioned much about James Wiseman. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want to talk about that in our looking forward to the rest of the season discussion?
I think that fits best for what I want to talk about with him. I think it fits best for our conversation later in the show.
Okay. All right. So stock up, stock down. Stock up. You have Corey Joseph. Speaking of guards that are getting a lot more minutes than we probably want to watch. Tell me about why you have Corey Joseph in your stock up.
Just a byproduct of the minutes he's gotten. I mean, look, everybody is so tired of Corey Joseph. Like, he's been in Detroit now he's one of the longest tenured Pistons on the team. Everyone is over the years wanted to see all the other guards play over him. So he gets so much flack, but he's also been really, really solid for Detroit this month. I mean, he's had 6 double-digit scoring games out of the 8 games that he's played in this month. Was huge in the win against Indiana. I mean, he's just been playing real good, solid basketball, and it's everybody gives him so much flack. Everyone's so sick and tired of him. It's the least we can do is when he's playing this productive, when he's playing this efficient, He's making the impact that he's making off the bench. Like, let's at least give him that little bit of recognition at the end of the year that when it's said and done, like Corey Joseph is not the worst backup, third, fourth guard off the bench. He's not flashy. He's not an exciting young prospect with a bunch of potential. He doesn't do anything that like stands out. He just kind of plays the game, and I mean he's been great lately. Double-digit scoring in all 6 of Detroit's last 6 games. Been very, very efficient shooting the ball this month. 54% from the field, 48% from the three-point line. He's moving the ball. Just under 5 assists per game. I mean, you just got to give him credit when, at this point of the year, look, we've already talked about Hampton. We've already talked about Omoruyi. Let's give it to someone else. And you might want to talk about those guys even more in this segment. So I wanted to go with someone different, someone that I know that I've said, plenty of times, like, oh, I'm so sick of Corey Joseph. Like, I want to see Cunningham, James Doherty, Killian Hayes, whoever else has been on this roster. I just want to see him play because they're young guards with that quote-unquote potential. But Joseph's been rock solid, and I want to give him credit for that. I mean, the Pistons are, 16-54? Like, it doesn't hurt to give this guy a little bit of credit at this point.
He's a vet's vet. He is a veteran. He goes out there, he plays. He reminds me of his former teammate, George Hill, on the other side. A bad Indiana team that started off well, has not played that great lately. They're injured, but know who's out there fighting and competing and doing a full court press at the end of the second half, George Hill. At the end of the second quarter, George Hill. I'm cool with Corey Joseph. I am on the bandwagon of I hate seeing him. I would rather watch RJ Hampton play just because you don't know what you're going to get out of RJ. But, Corey Joseph, vet's vet, stabilize things. I'm going with another veteran on the roster, and that's Rodney McGruder. 38 minutes against Washington. He's had double-digit points in 3 straight games. Get this, he's hit 11 threes in his last 3 games. He was 4 for 9 against Washington, 4 for 5 against the Pacers in Game 2, and 3 for 5 in Game 1 on March 11th. Another veteran player who stepped in, takes on some minutes, and has played fine. There's a huge lack of wings on this roster, especially with Bogdanovich and Livers out. And McGruder has come in. He didn't shoot particularly well last game out against the Wizards, but still had 16 points. A vet's vet. 38 minutes for a guy who was probably not expecting to play that maybe in a month. Like in a month's time, he comes out and he does that against Washington. Just good things to say. He was almost traded. He came back. All of the team last year was happy to see him come back. He's just nice to have in the locker room. One of those veteran glue guys, and he has come out and he's played pretty well when his number's been called. And unfortunately, due to injury, that's been called upon too often. But I think he's played well, and much like Corey Joseph, I think he deserves his flowers as well for just being a vet. He just goes out and he just plays.
I agree. I mean, McGruder's been one of those guys who doesn't always see the floor, but comes out and he plays. He plays, and you could have gone with a couple different guys, right? Obviously,
sure.
Everyone's been infatuated with Omoruyi. But why not give the vets a little bit of love at this point of the year?
I agree. Those guys have been riding the bench all year, and now they're coming in and they're playing really meaningful minutes in an otherwise lost year. Now, what about your stock down? Who do you have for your stock down this week?
I feel like I've had him multiple times this year, and that's Marvin Bagley.
You have.
He just can't stay healthy. He just can't. And he's out now again with an ankle injury. Started the season with a knee injury. Then came back, he broke his wrist or whatever, broke his hand, was just coming back from that, only played in a handful of games, and he's already out again with an ankle injury. And the dude just cannot stay healthy. This isn't something new. Every season he's injured. Every season he's missing extended periods of time. And I'm not a big fan of him when he's on the court anyway. So the guy just can't stay healthy. You could say the same thing about Isaiah Livers. Out again. Just another guy that is always hurt, always missing time. And it's just disappointing. It is. Maybe I should have gone Livers now that I mentioned him because he got hurt again. Both
Right.
guys could be it, I guess. Can I do a dual pick? I don't know if you were going to go Livers.
Well, mine was Isaiah Livers, and I think I picked him a couple of podcasts ago because of his injury problems and given the amount of playing time he has available to him, and just not being able to stay healthy really limits his ability to demonstrate what he can do, because there is going to be a need for a wing. Maybe not a starting wing next year, but you're going to need a wing who can play some defense and who can take some spot up threes. And he has the perfect opportunity to do that with Bogdanovich out and Alec Burks out, and just the myriad of shots that are available. He has the opportunity to really demonstrate that he could be a piece next year, and he's injured again. So Livers was my pick. So don't feel too bad. You can continue down the Marvin Bagley train of pain.
It just sucks.
Yeah, I mean, they just can't stay healthy. It's
I
just
really
a huge
want
bummer.
to see Isaiah Livers play. Like, once it was reported the Pistons were going to essentially shut down Bogdanovich for the year, Hamidou Diallo got hurt. It's like Isaiah Livers was the last man standing. And, we talked at the beginning of the season, before the season started, like Jasper was really pushing, like Isaiah Livers should start for this team. And he was going to get all that opportunity and more. And again, just gets hurt. I don't know what it is. It's unfortunate because I really, really wanted to see what he could do. And I really want him to be able to build off these last 15 games of the year to take something into the offseason, to take something into next year. Because, like the Pistons do need him. They traded Sadiq Bey, and it's really left to him and Bogdanovich as the wings on this roster. If you want to throw Hamidou Diallo in there as well, you can toss him in there. But like a team that desperately needs someone to emerge on the wing, and it was all up to Isaiah Livers, and right away he's out again.
Yep. And he's got a hip injury. He's not going to play against Denver. That would be today if you were listening on the day that this podcast comes out. He does get a couple days. Pistons don't play again until Sunday when they play Miami. So hopefully he can come back for that game. But disappointing for Isaiah Livers. And it's unfortunate for the Pistons for many different reasons. We've talked about how all year this is an evaluation period of what's going to stick around. And, Isaiah Livers has there is the body of a good wing in there. You can see the structure of a wing who can body up other players, who can knock down threes. A 3-and-D wing is like the most coveted asset in the NBA right now, and he has the makings of being that. Just needs to be able to stay on the court. And so, speaking of looking at the rest of the season, we have 12 games left. Injuries are just knocking guys down left and right. Bogdanovich is pretty much done for the year. Alec Burks has been hurt. Hamidou Diallo is hurt. Isaiah Stewart is out for the rest of the year. We just talked about Livers and Bagley. What are you going to be looking for the rest of the year? It doesn't have to be a player. It could be, a battle between two players to see how they are going to work out next year. It could be the two bigs. Like, personally, I'm looking forward to seeing how in the hell they're going to play James Wiseman and Jalen Duren at the same time, using Wiseman as a 4. It's a terrible idea. I hope that the Pistons don't actually go through with this, but you traded for Wiseman when you already have Jalen Duren. Are you going to try to play them at the same time? I mean, again, hopefully not. Wiseman was 4 for 15 shooting against the Wizards. He was 0 for 1 from deep. This is the time to just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. But that's what I'll be looking at, and then the backcourt as well. But what are you going to be looking at as we round out the season already? Just 12 games left. That is crazy.
It's insane that it's already gotten to this point of the year. I mean, it's been a tumultuous, disappointing season, but it's crazy that we're 12 games away from the end of it. I said I'd talk about Wiseman. It's connected to Jalen Duren. Are the Pistons going to continue to start James Wiseman over Jalen Duren. Duren's been back for 4 games now. He's been capped at 24 minutes, I believe is the most that he's played over the last 4 games. Only played 18 on Tuesday against Washington. And I'm very curious if that is more of a just came back, missed a couple weeks with some ankle soreness, we're not rushing him back, or if it's we really want to see James Wiseman, so he's playing over Jalen Duren, or is it we like James Wiseman more than Jalen Duren? And that would be absolutely insane. I think it's far-fetched, so I don't want to believe that that's true.
Well, for what it's worth, Jalen Duren was in foul trouble in the first half, which limited him to, he had less than 10 minutes in the first half against the Wizards. He may have had less than 8 or 7 minutes. So he was in foul trouble. So that game was kind of an anomaly. And I think he was off the bench due to just coming back, and there's no real reason to. I mean, that is a guy that is the starting center next year. Probably not evaluating him like you are James Wiseman. But yeah, I think it was a symptom of he was just coming back, and he got into foul trouble in the first half, and they really couldn't play him. I think he only played like 17 minutes that game, or maybe less.
I want to hope that you're right, but like, what about Isaiah Stewart? And what about the report that said the Pistons want to start James Wiseman when they traded for him? And I mean, Wiseman is starting right now, so it's like, I want to believe that. I want to believe Jalen Duren's the starting center next year. But the minutes that he's played since he's come back, to me, are concerning. Totally get the foul trouble last game, limiting him in the first half. But, I mean, 18 minutes, 20 minutes, it's just not enough. And he's been good. He's certainly trying some more stuff right now. I think seeing James Wiseman come in and seeing what he tries to do offensively, like we saw Jalen Duren come out that first game back on March 9th and was already trying some different post hook stuff, post move stuff, even a little bit of like a jump shot that we really haven't seen from him. So he's certainly letting some things fly offensively that maybe aren't natural to him or are new to him. But he's still been very, very effective in the minutes that he's played. And I'm also curious, like you are, if they're going to play Wiseman and Duren together. But I'm also curious of what's the pecking order look like between those two. And, it sounds like Isaiah Stewart's out for the remainder of the year. It sounds like they're essentially just shutting down Bogdanovich, Stewart, Diallo, maybe Alec Burks as well. I mean, that's another guy that hasn't played for, the last 10, 11 days.
Right.
So they're shutting down a lot of these guys. So you're not sure how it really pans out because you don't have the full scope of everyone being active. Now Bagley's hurt again. Now Livers is hurt again. Those other guys that could be getting some minutes in the front court. But I need some more clarity on how they're going to manage Duren and Wiseman. And I'm not super high on Wiseman. I don't think he does anything that stands out.
You aren't?
No, believe it or not. A lot of guys
stunned.
Do 10, 12, 14, 16 points a game, standing, plotting themselves under the rim and waiting for the ball, getting 3-second violations late in games because they want the ball and they're not moving unless they get it. A lot of guys can do that and end up getting you 15, 16, 17 points a game. Those guys don't make it in the league. And, I know everyone's going to say, Wiseman's young. He's got to learn. He's already said he's got to get better at screening. And it's like, okay, then let's see it. Like, he's got 12 more games this year to do it. Let's start to see him do it. He's not, been as bad as thought he would be. He's still not good defensively. But there are some things there where it's like, okay, if you could get him to do the right things offensively and learn how to at least make some sort of impact defensively, you could get 15 minutes a game out of him, 16 minutes a game out of him. But the fact that he's playing more than Jalen Duren right now, that's something that has to change by the end of the year because Jalen Duren is this team's center of the future, has shown more than Wiseman. It's better than Wiseman at this point already in their careers. And that's really it for me in regards to those two. Like, this team needs to be committed to Jalen Duren, and not loving the minutes distribution right now between those two. Hopefully it's just a byproduct of Duren's coming back and there's only been 4 games or whatever, but that's something that I'm watching. And then, yeah, what is the guard rotation looking like the rest of the year? I mean, Killian Hayes is going to get all the opportunity in the world again. I don't think he's been very good. He had that 1-2 month stretch where he was pretty solid, but then he went back to being just pretty abysmal. And he's getting all the minutes in the world right now, getting all the opportunity in the world right now. Hampton, Omoruyi are going to continue to get that. It doesn't look like they're going to bring back Burks if it continues to trend this way.
For the rest of the year.
Yeah, for the rest of the season. So it doesn't,
right.
Their guard rotation is kind of going to be very lackluster, pretty boring to end the season. But that's just me saying that. A lot of people still very, very strong believers in what Killian Hayes can do and what Killian Hayes can become. I've just at this point fallen off that boat, and it's going to be a prove me wrong type situation for me to ever jump back on board with that.
Do you think he's done enough? I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you think he's done enough to be the backup point guard next season, or are we looking at he's going to be the third point guard?
I don't, because you're going to have Cade Cunningham back, right? Jaden Ivey, who I hope they're not shutting down for the year. I hope they get Jaden Ivey back in the
he's probable to play against Denver, and that's as of 1 hour ago. So he should be on the court.
Cool, because I'm going to be at that game tomorrow night. So tonight, if you're listening to this on release day,
yeah.
Hopefully Ivey's playing. Hopefully
we've ruined the illusion.
Yeah. Okay, so that's good to hear. But you're gonna have Cunningham and Ivey next year, right? Alec Burks is going to be back. Ideally, this team gets another guard that can shoot, space the floor, do those types of things. And God, at this point, it's like how much more opportunity can Killian Hayes get to show he's an average backup guard? It's not even like we're talking about him. It's he's been good, but he's not starter good. So he'd be good to have off the bench. It's he's been just bad. And he has a couple of games here and there where it's if he could do this consistently, then yeah, he wouldn't be a terrible backup guard. But the pendulum just swings so drastically with him one way or the other. And again, the Pistons are going to need more spacing next year. Heck, who knows what happens if they end up with, the number 2 pick. And it's what if they do take Scoot Henderson? So there's a lot of different factors, obviously, that play into that question. But, in my mind, I don't think the Pistons should be tying themselves to the idea that Killian Hayes is going to be the backup point guard next year. I certainly, at this point, I'm just not a believer in that. Again, if he comes out and he proves me wrong for, a full season's length, fine. I just don't know if you can look at what he's done in his career so far and believe that that's going to turn around, because I just don't see it.
So he had 10 points, 11 rebounds against Indiana in that second game, which, by the way, the Pistons demolished the Pacers by a ton. Omoruyi was a plus 24. Corey Joseph was a plus 23. Killian Hayes was a minus 11 in a game the Pistons won by 20 and were up by 30 plus. I don't know how that's possible with 10 points and 11 boards to still be a minus 11. James Wiseman was a minus 1 for what it's worth. I agree. I don't think he's done enough to be the backup point guard. He's probably done enough to stay on this roster next year. But I don't know beyond that. He still isn't a very good shooter. There are moments where you watch him drive to the rim and he uses his body and looks very, very in control. And you're oh, he's capable of that. And then there's times where he throws up a fadeaway one-legged jump shot from just outside the paint, and you're what are you doing? He the pendulum does swing very wildly with Killian Hayes. But RJ Hampton is also vying for kind of a similar role in that backcourt for next year. Hampton has looked like a little bit of a better shooter. He's still pretty erratic, I would say. Do you think there's any competition between Hampton and Hayes, or is, if you had to pick between one of the two to be on the roster for next year, who would you be picking?
Oh, God. What a tough question, because I really don't know. I mean, if I go off what I said earlier, which is, Hampton's playing well right now, but there's no history that suggests this is like the usual for him.
No.
As a fifth guard, I guess I'd say Killian Hayes.
I would probably agree.
The fact that it's this much of a question, doesn't that concern you? I mean,
yes, it does actually. Yes.
Isn't that
Thank you for asking.
disappointing that's like an actual question that we're thinking about? Because Killian Hayes has gotten all the opportunity in the world this year, and outside of a good month and a half, there have been so many bad games that it's just really, really tough to buy into what he can do.
Right. And he is pretty limited. And as a shooter, I'm not buying the RJ Hampton shooterness right now. It's just not something I really believe in. He looked great against Indiana, but everybody looked really good against Indiana.
Right.
So you can throw that game
first
out.
Quarter of that game and finish with 10. And it was against that first quarter defense was, defense the whole game from Indiana was embarrassingly bad. But there was
awful.
God, I remember one possession where Isaiah Jackson, who already picked up 2 fouls, Killian was in transition or whatever. Jackson was kind of back in the paint, and he literally just turned and just essentially and told him, "Hey, just take the layup. I'm not going to try to block you and get called for
right."
Right. So
and, there are things like there was a fast break with Hayes running the fast break, and he can recognize that the way that the Pacers were laid out defensively, there was almost nobody beyond the free throw line. There was no backline defender, and he's able to see that, and he's able to charge in. And that was the same play where he used his shoulder to create just a little bit of separation. There are moments like that, and you think, oh, okay, he can recognize that. He can make a play. He could use his body, and all that is great. But in the same vein of me not really believing in RJ Hampton's shooting, I don't not necessarily believe that that's going to be the norm for Killian Hayes from here on out.
Right. It's just so hard the highs and lows with him. It's just so hard to buy into him ever really fully putting it together. And when obviously for next season, it's it doesn't hurt you to keep Killian Hayes. It's not like he's hitting a ton of cap space, but the year after, you have to extend him. So, or you let him walk. So, at that point, does it really mean anything to keep him if you don't? It's disappointing. We're continuing to have this conversation. Was really hoping that at this point this year, it would be, we would know hey, Killian is actually a player. He's kind of figured some stuff out, but we just haven't.
Nope, we haven't. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to the rest of the season? 12 games. Anything that you want to see? Because you probably won't be seeing Bogdanovich and those guys, which is unfortunate. But anything else that you're looking forward to as we wrap up the season and as we wrap up this podcast?
No, there's only so much you can look to see with the group that's left playing. I want to see more Ivy minutes at the 1 if he's back, which fingers crossed he's playing tonight. I want us to continue to see him play minutes at the 1. I thought those were phenomenal minutes, and it's exciting to me that he is showcasing that he can do that. That's not something that I really fully believed in when I watched him at Purdue and watched him throughout the scouting process. That wasn't something that was necessarily on my mind. Thought he was more of a 2, but if he could do this much initiating and he's gotten so much better at reading defenses, knowing how to manipulate his body, his speed, when to speed it up, when to slow it down. That's really, really encouraging, because that's going to make life easier for Cade Cunningham going to allow him to play
yeah.
a little bit more. And that's really, really encouraging to me. So hopefully Ivy's back, and hopefully the Pistons commit to playing him some more at the point guard spot over these last 12 games.
Yeah, Jasper and I touched on it last week. His ability to stop and start and see passing lanes is getting better and better every game. And I said last week, the game is actually slowing down for him. And you can see it happening over the course of, the last like 15 games or so, where he's able to make reads in the pick and roll. He's able to make reads in transition. He can see the floor differently. He's still going to turn the ball over a lot because that's what young ball handlers do, especially when they're trying to play make. They're just going to make mistakes. But the game is actively slowed down for him, and you can see it happening. I mean, to get 13 assists with some of the shooting that he's had around him is nothing short of a miracle. And I believe he had 13 assists against, I can't remember who, but he had 13 assists and he had 12 assists in one game prior. The game is definitely slowing down. I'm also looking forward to seeing some more Jaden Ivey at the 1 minutes. He looks like a star in the making. Just seeing the game slow down for a young guy like that is just so encouraging, because you see all these teams with rookies. I mean, you see the Pistons with a ton of young guys that the game isn't slowing down yet for them, and they're not able to, see that. They're not able to see the game like they need to, like in the Pistons game against Dallas, where Saddiq Bey drove right into the rim and had an easy dump off pass to Jalen Duren in a dunker spot. Would have been an easy 2. I think it would have either tied the game or given the Pistons the lead late in the 4th. And he just charged forward, didn't even look, and just threw up a shot. That was an instance of, okay, all right, we have to move on. We can't go on like this. So to see it happen with Ivy in a positive way is really nice to see. So I'm also looking for Jaden Ivey at the 1 minutes. See that tonight.
Not tomorrow.
Tonight. Illusion fixed.
Yes.
We solved it.
Good.
The space-time continuum is all good. All right. Anything else, Aaron, before we wrap up this edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast?
No, it's good to be back. Really, really hoping we can figure out next week getting all 3 of us on the show. I apologize. Not been on my A game. But hopefully we can get it good for next week. Get all 3 of us on the show. Oh, but
hey, like Corey Joseph and like Rodney Magruder, Jasper and I step right in as the veterans of POP, and we're just able to handle the podcast, able to just do our job.
Yeah, I'm the Killian Hayes of the Palace of Pistons podcast.
Yes, you're very controversial.
People love me or hate me. There's really no in between.
Right.
So
the pendulum just swings so wildly, we don't know. Okay. Well, Aaron, thank you for coming back on the pod. It's good to have you back. Hopefully we'll get all 3 of us back on the podcast for next week. I want to thank our sponsor for this week's podcast once again, BetOnline. This edition of the Palace Pistons podcast has been brought to you by BetOnline. So for my co-host, Aaron Johnson, I am Mike Anguilano. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, and we will see you all next time.